Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, friends, colleagues and friends, let me welcome you in the first lab lecture of data warehousing. This is going to be an intensive lab set of lectures or sequence of lectures, and I would be expecting you to do a lot of work. Now you may say that in other lectures the lab sessions were not so demanding or they were not so much intensive, but that is not a valid comparison. I am saying this because most of my students say the same thing when I offer a course. Remember one thing, that the time which you put in learning the skills and the techniques, that time is going to pay you back with an interest, and you have nothing to lose as a matter of fact. So you must be prepared to work and work hard for long hours, and you should reach a certain level of expertise so that when you go and hit the job market, the market receives you with open arms. That is going to be your objective. Now in these set of lab sessions, we will be using a certain data transformation tool which is used in data warehouse installations in our country, and for that purpose I intend to use the SQL Server DTS or Data Transformation Services. Now there are a number of data warehousing environments and tools available in the market today, but some of them are very expensive, and of course they work for a certain select set of environments where the requirements are of very heavy in terms of the number of tables to be processed and the size of the tables and so on. And those tools and techniques require a substantial investment in money and in time also. So they have a limited application domain, but of course that is there. In the context of this course, the intention is to expose you and train you in those tools and technologies which have a wider base of acceptance in the market today. The reason being that we should be able to train you with the available resources, and so that you are prepared and you have more than a few prospective employers who are able to absorb you. Remember one thing more, whatever tool you get training on, the key to all the training is absorbing the concepts, because once you absorb and understand the concept, then you can pick up other tools also. And usually when the employers employ you, even if you have been trained on their own specific tools, they will still put you through a training session. So in that case you are going to be having a double advantage, trained in DTS SQL Server and probably trained in other tools and techniques also. So I hope this is sufficient for you to start working and for us to execute and move ahead on the first lab lecture of data warehousing. So I'll start with DTS, an introduction, that is Data Transformation Services. First of all, before we proceed ahead, I would like to tell you the name of the reference book. There can be and there are number of books available in the market today, and you can pick the book which is available and which can suit your pocket also. But if you look at the screen, this is the book which is quite a good book, which can be used as a reference book. Of course, I'll be providing you with notes and relevant material along with as we proceed in this course. So this book is going to be helpful. DTS or Data Transformation Services. What does it constitute and what it contains? I'll talk about it. In this lecture, in today's lecture, I intend to cover the basics of DTS, the concepts, the facilities it offers, what it constitutes, and how it can be used in the different applications and different problem scenarios that we will be covering in the coming lab sessions. Now, I may appear to be moving a little bit faster, and I probably might be fast. The reason being that once you sit in front of the machine and you start using DTS SQL Server, then of course if you have these notes in front of you, you will be very quickly absorbing and picking and moving ahead. The purpose of this lecture is to just get you started in using this simple to use and yet a powerful tool. I hope you have understood what I have said. So let's move ahead and move along with the next set of slides. So the topics that I be initially covering are as follows. A DTS overview. What is an overview of DTS? Let me talk about the DTS overview. As you can see on the slide, that the function of DTS is to collect data from disparate sources, extract data, transform data, consolidate data, and move that data to single or multiple destinations. Now, to perform these operations, DTS provides a graphical user interface in which different tasks and operations can be integrated and can be connected graphically with minimal amount of programming required. Now, this technique of a graphical environment suits people who are not interested in heavy programming or the requirement when there is of light programming or no programming at all. Now, this is not an ultimate kind of an environment. So if further or fine tuning is required, or those operations are required which are not supported by this graphical environment, or are not simple enough, which are complex enough not to be supported, for this purpose a programming interface and programmable objects are also provided. So this is a powerful environment. And what do we intend to achieve out of this environment? So let me explain it. DTS overview, and followed by the overview is the concept of DTL. So we can have different data sources. We can have a text file, we can have an Excel file, we can have an Access database, or we can have other, say probably an Oracle database, or I don't know, maybe a FoxPro or DBase environment. Now, what DTS provides is an object linking and embedding OLE database connectivity, which provides a platform to extract data from all of these different environments, and through DTS that data goes into a centralized database which ultimately becomes a data warehouse. So if you look at your screen, you will see the different sources of data, and through those sources DTS is the pivotal point or the key through which the data from those disparate sources gets transformed and lands into the central database, which becomes the data warehouse. So this is the concept of DTS. Example of DTS, let me give you an example. You will be doing number of lab exercises, and there is enough data and there are enough challenging problems to keep you awake till late hours in the night, and of course most of the day. Now these problems are quite complex and very challenging. The objective of giving you these problems is to prepare you for the real life problems, and the problems that you will be tackling in the lab sessions, if they are not equivalent to the real life problems, they are very much similar, because the data which is going to be given to you, that is simulated data, yet very extensive efforts have been made to simulate or convert it to real life data, right? So let me give you an example. Now suppose you get data, simple data about customers or about clients from different data sources, say for example from two data sources, and the intention is to move their data into the central data repository. Now I can almost guarantee that the data which you get from different sources, that data is not going to be similar. There has to be, and there are going to be, several standardization problems and issues, and the list goes on. We will be tackling all of them throughout the lab sessions. So let me give you an example of such a data sources from different sources. So please have a look at the screen. As you can see on the screen, there are two customers, Muhammad Anwar and Chaudhry Muhammad Aslam, and there is a certain date which I believe is their birth date. And then at the bottom of the screen there is information about two more customers, Ahmed Jahazeb and M. Farrokh, along with their date of birth. Now it's very obvious that if it's not obvious, it should have been obvious. These four records cannot be placed together because there is a severe standardization problem over here. Can you find or so the problems of standardization are not only in the name but also in the date of birth. So what DTS will do, this is just a very simplistic example I have given over here. So through DTS we standardize the names and use a consistent representation for Muhammad and use a consistent representation for date also. So as you can see that through DTS we are able to bring the data from different sources after standardization, and then it goes into the central or the centralized database or repository. Now this is a very simplistic example. Let me repeat, because the problems which we are going to be following or trying to solve in the lab sessions are more challenging and more interesting. DTS operations, what kind of operations are provided through the DTS environment? There are number of operations. For example, there is ability to connect to different sources, the ability to extract data from the sources, to create queries by building queries, to transform data, and to copying data from different databases to different data sources, and of course a support for programming in a high-level programming language, or in certain cases programming using a scripting language. Because to give you one example, if the column names are different or the orders of the columns are different, that is a simple transformation, and I'll give you the examples of the tools and the environments which support such kind of transformations. But say for example, if I would like to pick something from an address column and replace it by something, and that something falls anywhere in the address column, that is going to require some smart programming, probably using a scripting language such as JScript or VBScript. So these are the operations which DTS provides in the context of the overview of DTS that I am providing to you. And what are the tools which DTS provides for the programmer or the end user for the transformation purposes? To list or to tell you some of the tools. Now there are a number of tools which are available which DTS provides to the programmer, and one of the tools is the import export wizard. And while you import the data from a database or external source, you can do some simplistic transformations on the way also. Along with this transformation, which is through the import export wizard, there is a DTS designer environment also, which is a graphical environment with a set of connections, with a set of tasks, and a generic set of menu, and of course a designer area. I'll be showing you the details of the designer. Then there is the query designer also, and there's a whole list of other features and facilities which the DTS provides in the shape of tools. Now all of these facilities can be accessed and can be launched through a a main menu or the programming context or the program menu of the Windows. So what I'll do now is going to show you how to access or how to run DTS SQL Server. Now, an interesting thing about DTS SQL Server is that it's very easy to install. It took less than 5 minutes, yes, less than 5 minutes to get it installed and running on my laptop. And DTS comes along, I believe, as a standard utility with SQL Server 2000. So you don't have to buy anything else. It works and it gets installed when SQL Server is installed. Now, how to run DTS? This can be performed through the SQL Server Enterprise Manager. So how we go about doing this? Let me show you. Now, the SQL Server Enterprise Manager can be accessed from the Start button. So if you look at the screen, I have written on the screen how to run the Enterprise Manager and what is going to be displayed on your screen when you actually run it. So from the start you go to Programs and then to Microsoft SQL Server and then to Enterprise Manager. When you do that, you are going to get a screen similar to the one which I have displayed in front of you. Now, this is not the exact screen which you are going to see in front of you, because I have gone into a number of nested menus and gone to data transformation services. Of course, when you execute the SQL Server Enterprise Manager, you will be landing at the console root. I hope this should be clear to you. Now, this is how you go about and start using the DTS services which come along with SQL Server. Now, before I actually dive into more details of DTS, let me tell you something interesting about the market of DTS. There is a Microsoft certification for DTS also. There is a course available in the market. I don't know nationally it is available or not, but it's about a 15 module course which consists of about 35 hours. The cost of this course is anywhere from $2,000 to $2,500. So it's a pretty expensive course, and the reason being that there is a big market for DTS professionals. Now, if you are thinking that in this lab session I'll be covering those 15 modules, you are mistaken, because you are not getting 2 rides for 1 ticket. But that's not the only reason, because we don't have 35 hours to spend on DTS. Of course, if you had the time, I would have gladly prepared you to appear in that certificate course and have a consolidated and a strong credential while you go job hunting. DTS basics. So there are about 5 basic actions or basic components of DTS, which are the package, the tasks, the connectivity, the connections, and the workflow. So what I intend to do is cover all of them one by one, going into detail as and when required. And the detail for the DTS package is going to be the most, because this is the crux or the heart of DTS. A DTS package is similar to your program. Your program is a sequence of instructions, and for a sequential machine, one after the other, the instructions are executed and the program gets executed, and whatever logic was developed, that logic is performed on the input and one gets the output. Now, similar to the program, in the context of a high-level programming language, there is something which is called as a DTS package, which consists of tasks, which consists of transformations, which consists of connections in a certain sequence and a certain sequence of workflow. And the contents of this task, which is called as a package in its entirety, they are executed. They can be scheduled to be executed at certain times with certain facilities, which I'll be telling you, and that is equivalent to the program which is used in a high-level programming language to solve problems. So DTS package, as I've already mentioned, it consists of tasks it consists of connections and workflows, and collectively a package can perform the transformations which are required. So what are the contents of a package? What the package looks like? Please have a look on the screen. So dear students, colleagues and friends, what you see on the screen is the designer or the DTS package designer, and what you see on the screen are different icons with certain connectivity through directional arrows. This is how a package looks like. It consists of connections, which is represented by the Microsoft Ole DB cylindrical box, and it consists of transformations, which is shown by the black arrow, and the connection is established, data is retrieved from an Microsoft Excel sheet. Then of course certain operations are performed or certain tasks are performed on the data which has been retrieved, and when those tasks are successful, certain set of operations are performed, shown by the green arrow, and if it's not successful, then other operations are performed, shown by the blue arrow. So as you can see that this is a graphical and visual environment, and one can very easily bring tasks, bring connections into the designer area and compile and perform transformations which are required. Now why I am stressing so much on transformation? The reason being that if you recall what we discussed in the ETL lectures, that ETL takes somewhere from 50% to about 60-70% of all the resources in terms of time and money before the data is ready to be loaded into the data warehouse. So that is why transformation is very critical. And as we proceed, and I'll explain you of a scenario in the next lecture, that you may have data available, but if it's not transformed, it cannot be used collectively. And even if you don't use the data collectively and try to use it without doing proper transformations, you are not going to get correct results. So this is the biggest pitfall. That is why we are spending so much time on ETL and on transformation. So after how or what the contents of the package looks like, let me proceed further. Execution of the package. When a package is executed, what I showed you on the last slide, there was a green arrow also, which we'll of course discuss in more detail. When you press on it, the package gets executed or its execution starts. What really happens? It connects to a data source, it copies data from the data source, it performs transformation on the data that has been extracted and notifies the users and notifies the other processes that what has happened. And even if you are at home, you can, as a matter of fact, schedule to run these packages at certain predetermined times and receive emails depending upon what kind of results or outcomes were there, so that you can act accordingly. I hope you are following me. So how a DTS package is created? Let me briefly go through how it is created. I have touched upon the package creation not very directly a couple of slides earlier. So let me briefly explain how a package is created. So there are about 3 ways to create a DTS package. One is through the import export wizard. Now I'll show you on the screen how the import export wizard works. So basically when this option is selected, it further gives you number of options, and you set the parameters and a package is created. Now a package consists, as I have said earlier, it consists of connection, it consists of tasks, it consists of transformations, and messages are processed or passed. Now when the wizard, import export wizard is used, actually the contents of the package are not visible to you. The contents are there, but they are not visible to you because it works for very simple or simplistic transformations. The other way or the other option of creating a DTS package is through the package designer, and I showed you the content or the contents of a package using the DTS designer. And when you have a package creation facility through the designer, it's a much more powerful and rather complex facility, and you can connect different tasks, connections and operations to create a package. The third one is through a programming environment, and you can use a scripting language or a high level programming language. And if the language in which you have performed the coding is not being connecting to the DTS, probably you need a DLL, the corresponding DLLs. So with the corresponding DLLs, of course, you can use high level programming languages also. So these are the three ways of creating a package. We'll go into more details about what can be achieved and what are the benefits and the shortcomings of those three techniques. Creating a package through the import-export wizard. Now, how do we go about using the import-export wizard? If you look at the screen, I have given the path also and what it's going to look like. Now, as you can see on the screen, that when we launched DTS, then you go to the tool option and go to the data transfer service option and then click on import export. Now this is going to provide you the facility to import data, and there are three options to store the data, where the data can be stored, which consists of the local SQL Server databases, the metadata services and the metadata alone. I'll be explaining all three of them in the coming slides, so just don't worry. And this is one way of creating a package. As you can see on the next slide, that what you're going to see when you are using the import export wizard. I am not going to go through all the slides showing you everything because that's very time consuming, but of course when you actually perform the transformations, you start using DTS, then this is going to become very clear. And in the coming lectures, what I'll be doing is I'll be actually showing you everything on the screen, basically performing the task, and you will see everything. The objective of this lecture is just to prepare you, and it's kind of a look and feel lecture to show you what to expect and to give you a head start, so that when we meet again, you have done certain experimentation with DTS. Creating a package using DTS designer. Now before I go to the DTS designer, a couple of two things which I would like to say more about the import export wizard. This is probably the easiest way of performing or creating a DTS package. And why it's very simple? Because it works for very simple transformations such as rearranging the columns. And what is meant by rearranging the columns? For example, I have data from two sources, and say for example the name column is the ith column in one table and is I plus kth column in the other table. Now if both of these tables have to go into a centralized database in which the position of the name column is I minus kth, it means that I have to rearrange the position of the columns in each of the original tables so that when they land into the centralized database, there is no problem. And of course it can also do simple ActiveX transformations also. This is through the import export wizard. Now using the DTS designer package. Now how do we go about launching the designer package? Let's take a look at the screen. Now as you can see on the screen, when I connect or click on the data transformation services, which is kind of hidden behind the menu or the pop-up menu, and then you go to action and then you click at new package. Now when you do that, then the designer is going to open up and you will see how it's going to work and how it's going to offer you certain facilities. Now this is going to be shown to you on the next screen. Now as you can see on the screen, The designer consists of three parts, namely A, B and C. A part consists of number of connections. So what these icons mean, that it's a connection through to a text file, to an Excel database, to an Access database, or using an OLEDB connection to any other product which supports databases. The part B of the menu shows you different tasks. These tasks are copying data or performing transformations or running SQL, and there are about 15 or 16 such tasks. Then there is a generic set of tasks which is shown or which was shown at C or the set C, and then is the designer area where you can actually drag and drop different tasks and different connections, and you can join them together, and then you can execute a DTS package. Now, what can be achieved by the DTS designer? Before I discuss about the programming, I'll tell you very, very briefly about it's a graphical mode, and it can support certain complex transformations, and these transformations are complex enough such that they cannot be performed using the wizard. Now we move on to the programming context of DTS, that how programming can be used to create DTS packages. So experienced programmers can use the facility of creating a DTS package through programming, and this programming facility is not advised for every programmer because it requires a certain amount of expertise also. Other than this, the strong feature of this facility is that you can create quite powerful transformation programs. And if you recall, when we discussed the BSN method, the basic sorted neighborhood method, I mentioned and I gave you an example of a technique in which the contents of the column were sorted, numbers first, and then based upon the numbers, the contents of the rows were compared to identify the duplicate records. Now, one way of performing this kind of transformation is through a traditional programming environment, but one can use the DTS package also with the programming facility and link the programs which have been created into the DTS package, which is going to connect with the databases and perform the transformations and generate the results. Now, collectively, this is going to become a very powerful feature, which I believe when you actually perform, you will get convinced also. I hope this is making a lot of sense to you. If there are any clarifications are required, any questions, you can always send emails, and you can always access the notes also and the reference book for further clarification. There is lots of data available on the net also, but you should proceed in the sequence in which I have suggested to you. Now, after using programming to convert or to create a DTS package, we would like to save the package also. Now, there are a number of ways to save the DTS package. The DTS package can be saved as a SQL Server database or a SQL Server instance. It can be saved with metadata associated with it, with version numbering associated with it, and it can also be saved as a Microsoft Visual Basic file also. So there are a number of ways of saving the DTS package, and consequently certain benefits and certain additional facilities which are available with saving a package. So now I will briefly go through those three basic methodologies, or the three basic methods or the facilities which can be exploited when a DTS package is saved. Now, when we actually save this package in the context of different methodologies, you have a DTS editing screen in front of you, and then you can perform the save. So if you look at the screen, this is what you will see. As you can see on the screen, that there is a save option and there is a save as option also, and this save as option is going to perform the three different types of saves. So what are the three types of saves? Now, the three types or techniques to save, the first one is saving as a SQL Server table or an instance of SQL Server. Now if you look at the screen, this is one of the options which is available to you, and as you can see on the screen right now, that what is shown by local package, there's where what you have saved is going to be saved as an instance of the SQL Server. So if you click at local packages, you will see all the instances of SQL Server, different packages created, stored over there. Now the other option is metadata services. Now the advantage of metadata services is that it performs automatic versioning. By versioning, it means that as and when you modify a package, it notes the time, the date, and very detailed time of that package change, and you can also put your comments along with it, which I am going to show you in the subsequent slides. So that this is going to be very helpful, because you will be changing or modifying a package over a period of time depending upon how you proceed in your transformations till they are finalized. So if you look at the screen right now, you will see the location where the metadata services instance of the SQL Server is going to be saved. The third one is the metadata. This is the metadata. Now, as you know, metadata means the data about the data itself, and over here the data about the packages is going to be stored over here. This is additional information. I'm not going to discuss it. Just briefly look at the screen, and this shows you the location where the metadata corresponding services package is going to be stored with the version tracking facility of the packages. Now we created a package, we were able to save the package. Now the operations which can be performed on a package, there are 4 operations that can be performed on a package. A package can be edited, a package can be password protected, a package can be scheduled, and a package can be retrieved by version. So now I am going to discuss very briefly each of these operations. Editing a package. Editing a package is very simple. You just go to the corresponding the context which was opening the package through the designer, and the package is going to be displayed as a graphical image which can be worked on, and you can add connections, you can add tasks, you can change the order of operation, you can change the workflow, and you can connect all sort of tasks and connections, and you can edit the package, and of course you can then save the package, which we discussed in the last slide, right? Now, other than editing the package, what else you can do? You can protect the package. How can you protect the package? A package can be protected using a password. Now, what facilities are available to you? Just look at the screen. As you can see, this is the dialog box for the password, and the owner can put limit on editing and execution of the package. It means that if I create a package and I own the package, then I decide that who is going to get which privileges to execute that package, and this is going to be password protected for security reasons. Then the operation of scheduling. Now scheduling means that when the package is going to be executed. Now say for example the warehouse is updated in the form of a batch, probably late at night, and we know as an architect or the programmer that after say 11 p.m. the data is ready to be transformed. So the package automatically gets executed at the time which is set for it. The transformations are performed. If there are any errors or problems, emails are generated. So it's a very powerful facility. After scheduling is versioning. Now if you again look at the screen, this is how it looks like. That you have the creation date along with the time. You can set the description, and this sets the version numbers also. So you don't have to change the file names by putting version 1.1 or 1.2 or any other mechanism, because this is done automatically. DTS tasks. What are the DTS tasks which are available to you? This is the second point among the 5 points which I started a couple of slides back. So if you look at the screen, I have listed some of the tasks in front of you: establishing connections, importing and exporting data, transforming data, copying database objects. Now if you recall, when I showed you the DTS designer screen, there were 15 or 16 different tasks, and of course it's not possible and viable and advisable to list all those tasks for you, but as you proceed and as you use these tasks as required by the problem in hand, things of course are going to become clear. Now this is the screen which has now come in front of you, a snapshot of the screen which shows some of the tasks that I mentioned. Now these are some of the possible tasks. These can be dragged and dropped in the designer area, and as a matter of fact, these tasks can be arranged manually also. Now remember one thing, that when a package is created using the import export wizard, tasks are there also, but those tasks are not visible to the programmer, because that's one way of creating the package with certain privileges also and with certain facilities. Now the DTS transformations, what kind of transformations are possible? Now there are two sets of transformations, or two broad groupings of transformations which we'll be talking about, or which we'll be referring to. One is the available DTS transformations, which are standard transformations, and then there are customized transformations. Now customized transformations are going to work for the particular environment or for the particular type of data for which transformations are required. I gave you an example several lectures back that people will always find different ways of writing their names and writing their addresses depending upon which part of the world they live. So for such transformations, customized transformations are going to work. You have to create the transformation mechanism to get the desired and required transformation. So what kind of transformations are available? So for your facility, I am going to list some of those transformations which are the standard transformations available. Please take a look at the screen. Copy the column transformation, scripting transformations, date time, string transformations, case transformations, read file transformations, and the list goes on. So you can see that they are pretty generic transformations, and to a certain extent they are rather simplistic transformations also, and these transformations point to data coming from such sources where the things are pretty mature. It means certain standards are followed, and the transformations are kind of simplistic. Then are the customized transformations. How do you customize the transformation? One is that you use the ActiveX environment to write the scripting for the transformations. The other is that the transformations which are already available, you edit and modify those transformations and then used in the context of your problem. So that's the customized transformations. Now when you use the ActiveX facility to write or to customize the transformations, what you will see on the screen is displayed for your facility also, for your ease of understanding also. If you just look at the screen in front of you, this is how what you will see in front of you, and you will select the functions and then you combine the functions and you write the scripting, and then this scripting is going to be linked with DTS, and once it's linked with DTS, then of course you can perform customized transformations. So we have the standard transformations, we have the customized transformations, and when I go into the next lecture where I'll be shedding light on different problems or along with different types of data sets, things are going to become clear, and things and the pieces are going to fall in place. Now the DTS connections, what kind of connections are there which are supported by DTS? Now the most important task in DTS is the connection, and this is a task which is going to be performed before all other tasks, because one has to get data or to pass data to process data. Now, three kinds of connections are offered by DTS. One is a standard kind of a connection, or the OLEDB connection, and using this connection, data is available to be loaded from different sources. It could be an Access database, it could be an Excel file, it could be Oracle, it could be Teradata, or it could be DB2, and the list goes on. So that's one type of connection, or a data source connection. The other type of connection is a connection which retrieves data from a text file, and then there's a connection in which strings are passed. So I'm going to explain all three of them very, very briefly, and I'll give some examples also. Why we are discussing these types of connections? The reason being that in the next lecture of the lab session, I'll be discussing different data sources from which data is going to be loaded into a centralized database, and before that loading takes place, certain transformations have to be performed, and before those transformations can be performed, data has to be extracted, and when the data has to be extracted, these connections come into play. They are very important. So what are those connections? The data source connection. The data source connection is achieved by an OLEDB connectivity, and the types of databases or the types of data sources which can be accessed, I have explained them to you. Then is the file connection. This file connection typically works for text files, and when data is retrieved from the text file using a facility or identification based on a space or a column, comma or something else, the different parts of the text files are correspondingly accessed and go into the relevant columns of the SQL server. Then is the data link. This is the intermediate files. If you recall, I showed you an example in which when we were editing the DTS package, that there was an intermediate option also, and that corresponds to the data link type of connection. Now, how do you access those different connections? Now, these three types of connections have variation also, and one doesn't have to remember all of those connections before doing or using them, because if you recall, when I showed you the designer view, there was a connection menu also. So for your ease of understanding, I'm going to show you that screen again. So if you look at the screen in front of you, you will see the corresponding slide. So under the connection options, we have the data source connection shown by a different color. Then we have the file connection. File connection is enclosed by a different color. And then we have the data link connection. All you have to do is to drag the connection from the connection menu, bring into the designer area, and link with other operations, and you are up and running. So it's that simple. Package workflow. Now, what is meant by package workflow? It means that as in a program, if you recall, we list the instructions, and depending upon a certain test, the sequence of execution of the instruction changes, and it can change also. Now, as I mentioned in the very beginning of lecture, which is the first lecture of the lab session, that DTS package is equivalent to a programming code or the logic which is implemented using the program. So the flow of the program is influenced by different outcomes. Similarly, the flow in a DTS package is dependent upon different outcomes. So for ease of understanding, again look at the screen. There are two tasks, task A and task B, and on completion of these two tasks, task C can be executed. It means that unless and until task A and task B both are completed, task C cannot be executed. Now when task C is going to be executed, there can be two outcomes. What are going to be those two outcomes? It could be success or it could be failure. Now in the case of success, corresponding task is executed, and in case of failure, another task is going to be executed. Now the reason being that when a certain transformations are being performed, say for example we are talking in the context of transformations, then certain tests may not occur, or the outcomes are not as desired, or the outcomes are not as planned. So depending on those outcomes, other tasks are performed. Now at this point in time, it may look like that things are not working in a certain direction, but the objective of today's lecture is to show you bits and pieces of whatever we'll be using in the coming and subsequent lectures. Now how all of this looks in the context of a DTS package, that is shown to you on the next slide. Now as you can see on this slide, that the black arrow shows a transformation from an Excel sheet, and on success shown by the green arrow, a SQL set of tasks or a SQL task are executed, and on failure there is a copy SQL option. So you see that the flow of the operations in a DTS package that's how it's carried out. Now I believe I have been able to give you an overview of DTS. I don't expect you to become, I never ever expect you to go up and start running DTS very fluently. The objective of today's lecture was to show you bits and pieces of DTS, to tell you how and where to launch different parts of DTS, what DTS can do for you, what are the different tasks which are available, what are the facilities which are available, how different packages can be created using a wizard or using a designer or through programming environment, and what is the flow of a package, and what kind of tasks and transformations are available, what kind of different connectivity options are available to you. Now when you use all of them collectively, then you will be able to perform transformations, and then you will be able to load and extract data, which is called as consolidation in the context of DTS. Now what I would expect from you is that whatever was shown to you as screen snapshots, you will launch DTS through SQL Server, and you will at least do all of the things which I have shown you. Just touch upon them, just see where different things are available, where different options are available, what can be done, because once you are comfortable, then when detailed information is available to you, when we actually start using DTS, I show you on the screen, then of course it's going to become very easy and very simplistic, and then you'll be very happy to see the results also. With this, Ahsan Abdullah is going to beg leave from you. Till next lecture, Khuda Hafiz.